They put the cake down in front of my niece, and my sister used the pause before the candles to tell 40 people what I was worth. She had the tumbler and the butter knife and the whole yard's attention. Callie was on her knees on a patio chair with her chin nearly in the frosting. Somebody's phone was already up. "Two things," my sister said. "One, this kid is 7. 2, we're making it official. Kendra's her godmother." The clapping started before I understood the sentence had a second half. Kendra is the woman my sister trains with at 6 in the morning, 4 days a week, and my sister said the rest of it over the noise with one hand flat on her back. She built a business from nothing in 18 months. That's the energy I want around my daughter. Winners around this girl, not warnings. Her eyes found me on the second word. And then, because apparently that wasn't specific enough to land, Thora's been generous, and we're grateful, truly. But a bank draft isn't the same as being a role model. A bank draft. $200 on the first of every month since September of 2019. 84 of them. Not one missed, including the 2 I ate rice for. 3 more things happened before the candles were lit, and I counted them. My mother said, out loud, "It's a lovely choice." My mother, who has told 4 of her neighbors to sit down with my brother-in-law because he takes care of the family. My brother-in-law put an arm around his wife. "She's got the paperwork side handled. We're covered there." The yard laughed, and in this family I had become a department. And Callie looked up from the cake and looked for me. Sugar on her chin, checking the crowd for my face the way she has since she could focus her eyes. I gave her a thumbs up, because there was nothing else on earth I was going to give her in that second. The lighter clicked twice and didn't catch. The 7 leaned deeper into the frosting. I sang. I clapped on the beat. I helped hand out plates. Then I walked over to my sister while she was still holding that stapled printout she'd been carrying around all afternoon. The roster of families in the group education program. Names, start dates, a column of balances. Her whole reason to be the most important person in any room in that parish. She had just called 7 years of my life a bank draft in front of 40 people. So I asked for the paper with my draft on it. "Can I get one of those?" "Why?" "I'd like to see my line." Her husband was 2 feet away with a plate in each hand. Neighbors on both sides. He said, "Give her one, come on," in the big easy voice men use when they're being watched, being decent. And she pulled the top copy off the stack and slapped it into my palm. "You're welcome," she said. I folded it twice, put it in my back pocket. My name is Thora Minat. I'm 29, and I coordinate medical records for a hospital system in Dayton, Ohio, which means I spend my days making sure a file says what everybody assumes it says. If you have ever been the one in this family who pays and doesn't get a vote, stay with me to the end of this one. And tell me in the comments where you're listening from, so I know who's in the room. My thumbnail went into the meat of my index finger hard enough to leave a crescent I could still find on Tuesday. I said thank you, I meant it differently. Before I left, I found Callie by the cooler and crouched down and kissed the side of her head, right where the hair was damp, and she smelled like sunscreen and buttercream, and she told me the bounce house was mine if I wanted a turn. I said nothing about the money, and I'm going to tell you exactly why, because I've heard how it sounds. Callie starts 2nd grade on the 24th with the children of half the people standing in that yard. If I had said it there, the version that reached her would come through a 7-year-old's mouth in a hallway, and it would be about her mother, and she would be the one holding it. She doesn't get to hold this, that's the whole line for me. So I drove home. I got my father's tin cookie box down off the shelf. He kept drill bits in it. I've kept 7 annual summaries in it, 1 a year, each one a single page with a logo across the top and a balance near the bottom. I laid them out on the kitchen table in order and photographed every page, front and back, and set the folded roster on top of the stack. 7 pages, 7 years. Not one of them said where the money went. Monday morning, 9 o'clock, the post office on Wilmington Pike. Certified, return receipt requested. 1 envelope, 4 requests, and I wrote them in the flat voice I use at work so nobody could call it a feeling. 1. A complete copy of the file on that account, every page, including the application and the delivery receipt. 2. The signed illustration. 3. Remove the agent of record. 4. Change the mailing address on the account to mine. The clerk stamped the green card and slid it back across the counter, and I put it in my wallet behind my badge. Here's what I wanted, and I wrote it down so I'd stay honest about it. I wanted the entire file in my hands before Labor Day, not the one page a year they mail you. And then I wanted my sister to sit somewhere with fluorescent lights and explain those pages to a person who was not related to her. I missed my own deadline. It went faster than that. 16 days after I mailed that letter, on the 26th of August, my sister was on my porch at 7:10 in the morning, holding a single sheet of paper, and she didn't say good morning, and she didn't say Callie's name. She said, "What did you do?" The file came back thicker than I expected. And on the very first page, in a box I had never seen on any of the 7 summaries in my father's tin, there was a word. Not a number, a word. I put the pages down. I put my palms flat on either side of them. The refrigerator cycled on behind me, and I stood there listening to it like it was going to say something. Because I had seen that stack of paper before, in a different kitchen, in the first week of that child's life, and I had been the one holding the pen. Everything the state of Ohio would eventually print my sister's name on started on her counter, 6 days after Callie was born. The bottle was warming in a pan on the stove because my sister didn't trust the electric one. Callie was 6 days old and asleep in a bouncer with one fist up by her ear. My brother-in-law had spread the papers over the counter in 3 neat rows and moved the fruit bowl to make room. "The company that administers the plan is a life company," he said. "That's just where these programs sit. Everybody's is like that." I was 22. I had a lanyard job and a used Corolla and 11 months of my father being dead. I signed where the flag stickers were. On the 4th page there was a line I didn't like the shape of, and I put the pencil down under it and read it twice. Designated beneficiary. "What's this?" "Formality," he said. He didn't look up. "You can change it any time." I left the pencil mark. It's still there in the copy, 7 years later, a little gray underline in my own hand. There was a box near the bottom of that page marked Servicing Representative with a name in it and an 800 number beside it. And I read it the way you read the fine print on a rental car agreement, which is to say, I read it and it went nowhere. My sister took the top sheet and filled in the mailing address herself, her own street, her own house. "So the paperwork lands somewhere it won't get lost," she said. She was right that it wouldn't get lost. The pan started to knock on the burner, and she reached past me and turned it off, and I signed the last one standing up. Back at work that week, I did what I do for strangers. I opened a request. I put a control number on it, and a received by date, and a due date 14 days out. And I clipped the certified receipt to the inside of the folder cover where I clip everything, and I wrote the account number on the tab in the same block letters I use for a chart. Night shift in a records department is 4 hours of nothing, and then a trauma page, and then more nothing, and in the nothing I built a file on my own family, the way I'd build one for a subpoena. Color-coded, dated, cross-referenced. At 2 in the morning I taped the control number to the inside of the lid of my father's tin, because a file with no number is a pile. And a pile is what people hand you when they'd like you to lose interest. There's a thing that happens when you spend 7 years making yourself easy to have around. You get very good at reading a room and very bad at reading a page, because reading the page means you don't trust the people in the room. That Wednesday I stopped being easy to have around. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't post anything. I didn't call my mother, and I didn't call Callie's school, and I didn't drive past my sister's house. I stopped asking to be included. I started keeping a file. Friday I took my lunch at the bank on Far Hills and asked the teller to print everything from September of 2019 forward. She asked how far back. I said all of it. She said that would be a lot of pages. I said that was fine. 84 debits. 1 a month, the first business day, 7 years without a gap. Every line printed the same string. ARFG Prem Draft Niak Dinero. I read the string out loud in the car. It didn't turn into anything. 4 letters that could have been a bank, a billing service, a processing house in another state. I had read that line on a screen or a statement more than 80 times. It's 4 characters of nothing, and a dash and a number, and your eye goes to the number, and the number was right, so your eye keeps going. I never once typed those letters into a search bar. That's not a confession. That's just what a person does with a line that has never given her a problem. I spread the 7 summaries out next to the bank pages on the passenger seat, with the door open and my legs out in the parking lot. $16,800 had left my account. 84 times 200. I did it twice on my phone and once on the back of the deposit slip. The most recent summary, the one that came in January, said current balance in a small font near the bottom of the page, 18,930, higher than what I'd paid. That's the number a person like me is supposed to see and feel fine about, and I want to be fair to myself here, because for 7 Januaries I did. But the sheet had a logo and a balance, and my name spelled right. That was all it had. Nowhere on any of those 7 pages did it say where $200 went on the first business day of the month. Not a feline. Not a fun name. Not a single word about what the money became between leaving my checking account and appearing next to that logo. 7 pages, 1 number each, and no road between them. Saturday I drove Callie's rain jacket over because she'd left it in my back seat, which was the truest excuse I have ever needed for anything. My sister let me in with the phone against her shoulder, mid-story about a listing that fell through, and I stood in the kitchen doing the thing you do, nodding at a story you came in on halfway. The mail was on the counter in the usual drift. A church bulletin, a flyer with her own face on it, and underneath, a window envelope, already slit open along the top with a knife, the flap standing up. Confirmation of health information. Through the window, my name, Thora Minat, spelled right, on the addressee line. Under my name, her street, her house number, her town. I have a very good work face. I've delivered a records denial to a grieving son with that face. She kept talking. She reached over without breaking the sentence and slid the real estate flyer across the envelope. One smooth motion, the way you'd move a coaster under a sweating glass, and went on about the appraisal. The corner of it still showed, a 1/4 inch of white and the top of the letter M. 2 days later, I went to the enrollment evening at the parish hall, because I have gone to every one of those for 7 years, and stopping would have been a sentence. The secretary had the ledger book open on the folding table by the door, the one with the ribbon marker, and she wrote Kendra's name into the godparent line in blue ballpoint while Kendra spelled it for her. The ink was still wet when my sister took her by the elbow and started walking her. Family to family, 15 minutes, the whole room. You know Kendra, she's just gotten certified. That was the sentence. She used it 11 times and I counted, because counting is what I had instead of talking. Certified. No object. No noun after it. In a parish hall full of people who nod at the word certified the way they nod at the word blessed. At the coffee table, she put her hand on the back of a man's chair and said, Kendra could sit down with him and his wife about the kids. No pressure, just a conversation. And he said sure, absolutely, and wrote his number on a napkin. One woman did ask. She asked how long Kendra had been doing this, and Kendra said she'd been in the wellness space 9 years, which is a true sentence about a gym and an answer to nothing. 11 parents nodded that night. I know because I stood at the back by the coat rack with a paper cup and counted everyone. Callie came through with a cookie in each hand and hugged my legs and kept going. Nobody in that room asked what she was certified in. Neither did I. I wrote the word down in my phone with the date, and I went home. And for the first time it occurred to me to wonder how a person gets certified in something in 18 months while running a gym. Wednesday the parish treasurer caught me in the Kroger lot with my trunk open. She's a woman in her 60s who has counted the collection every Sunday for as long as I've been alive, and she stood there with her cart and made conversation about the heat. And then she stopped making conversation. Can I ask you something odd? Sure. Do yours come every January too? The statements? Just the one page? The cart handle had a little rust on it. She had both hands on it. Just the one page, I said. With the logo across the top. With the logo across the top. She looked at the pavement for a second. My husband keeps saying we should get more than that, and I keep saying, well, they know what they're doing. 2 women in a parking lot with the same piece of paper. I didn't ask her a single question. I've watched people get spooked in an intake room, and I know exactly how fast a person closes when they smell that they're being interviewed. I took a card out of my wallet, crossed out the hospital number, wrote my cell on the back, and put it in her hand. If you ever want to sit down and compare them side by side, I said, I'm around. She put it in her coin purse, which is where women of that generation put things they intend to keep. 6 years we've been paying in, she said, to the cart handle more than to me. And I couldn't tell you the name of the thing we're in. Her trunk closed. Mine was still open. I stood there in the heat with the bags at my feet, and did the arithmetic on how many families sit in that church on a Sunday, and it was not a small number, and it was the first time the shape of this had edges outside my own name. Sunday dinner at my mother's, and my sister was in an expansive mood. Pot roast, the good tablecloth, Callie under the table with a coloring book. My brother-in-law took a call in the driveway. Somewhere between the potatoes and the pie, my sister put her fork down and looked at me pleasantly. Random question. You've never smoked, right? Not even in college? No. Not even like at a party? No. Perfect. She laughed and picked the fork back up. Just something for Callie's paperwork. My mother said something about how nobody in our family ever had, except an uncle, and that was pipes, and pipes hardly count. The conversation went to somebody's roof. Then my sister told the table that going forward, Kendra would be handling the family's education planning, that it was all getting consolidated, that it was honestly a relief to have somebody sharp on it. My mother said that sounded very organized. My sister said that was the whole idea, that she'd been carrying too much of this alone for too long, and everybody at that table agreed she had. I put my hand in my bag under the table and found my wallet by feel, and took the green card out, the little card with my own handwriting on it and a postal stamp across the corner, and I set it on the tablecloth next to my plate. Then I turned it face down and put my water glass on it. Callie's crayon rolled off the table and hit the floor, and everybody laughed at the noise. Monday the 24th, 10 minutes to 8, the elementary school lot. I have been at that fence for the first day of school every year since preschool. It's not a tradition anyone declared. It's just a thing I do, and Callie looks for me at the fence, and that's the whole ritual. She had the necklace on, the little gold letter C I bought her with the last of my father's money, and she was walking with her chin up, because second graders use the side door, and she'd been talking about the side door since June. She saw me and did the wave, both arms, no dignity at all. Two of her classmates turned around to see who it was for. My sister came across the lot with her sunglasses up in her hair and got close enough that nobody else could hear. "It's a big morning for her," she said. "Let's not make it about anything else." I hadn't said anything. I had a coffee in one hand and my keys in the other. "Okay," I said. She put her hand on Callie's shoulder blade and steered her wide along the fence line, past the side door, around toward the front entrance where the buses unload. Callie kept turning her head, twice, 3 times, walking sideways, until her mother's hand came up and put her straight. I stayed at the fence anyway, because leaving early would have been a different kind of answer. The last thing I got was her face over her mother's forearm, still looking, and the little gold C swinging out from her collarbone as she turned. That evening my mother wanted help hanging a bracket on the porch, which meant she wanted company. She held the level and told me she'd sent 4 of the neighbors over to my brother-in-law. 2 off her street, the widow from the corner, and the couple with the RV. He sat with all of them at the kitchen table. He's so patient. Do you know he brought me a folder? Do you still have it? Somewhere. She waved at the house, at all of it, the whole second floor. They handle all that. I stood on the second step with a screw in my mouth and had a choice, and I want to be honest about the choice, because I made it with my eyes open. I could tell my mother what I had, which was 7 pages that don't say anything, an opened envelope on somebody else's counter, and a word I didn't know the meaning of. She would have been on the phone to my sister in 9 minutes. Not out of cruelty. Out of the belief that everything in a family can be talked through if the right 2 people talk. And then my sister would know what I was doing before I knew what I was doing. "They handle all that," my mother said again, happy about it. She held the level dead flat and told me to say when, and she was so pleased to be useful with her hands that I let the bubble sit crooked for a second so she could correct me. I put the screw in the wall and turned it. Some things you don't say out loud yet, and the reason isn't courage. The next night I did what I know how to do. 3 tabs, 3 colors. Yellow for what came out of my account. Blue for what came in the mail. Green for what other people had. Yellow got the bank pages, 84 lines, highlighted in blocks of 12, so the years stayed separate. Blue got the 7 summaries out of my father's tin, in order, each one with the January date written in the top corner where the logo left room. I photographed both stacks again with the ruler in frame, which is a habit from work, and which I could not have explained if you'd asked me at the time. Green was empty, except for a parish treasurer's phone number and the word certified with a date next to it. The tin sat open on the table with the lid upside down beside it. My father used to keep his drill bits in it in order of size, smallest at the front, and he'd tap the lid twice before he opened it, every single time, for no reason either of us could ever explain. Somewhere around midnight, I picked up the pen and wrote one line on the green tab. 6 words. I'm not going to tell you what they were yet, because I want you to hear this the way it actually happened to me. And on the 25th of August, I did not have proof of anything. I had a question with a shape. I capped the pen. I put the folder in my work bag, standing up, spine out, where it would go into the trunk in the morning. Then I took the green card out of my wallet and looked at the date on the postal stamp and did the count. 15 days. 7:10 the next morning, the doorbell, twice, then the knuckles. My sister's hair wasn't tied back. Her car was running in the street with the driver's door open. She had one sheet of paper in her hand, folded down the middle from her fist, and she came in the second I opened the door and stopped in the middle of my living room. "What did you do?" I closed the door. She turned the page around and shook it at me. It was the confirmation letter. Change of agent of record. Effective date. The account number in the reference line. A phone number for questions. And here's the thing I did not expect, and the thing I've turned over 100 times since. She wasn't surprised that her husband's name was on my account. Not for a half second. Her face never did the thing a face does when it learns something. She skipped it entirely and came in from the other side, the way you'd interrogate a stranger who'd broken into a room you owned. "What did you do with my husband's name on this file?" My coffee was on the table behind me. 7:10 in the morning, in my house, and she had the confirmation in her hand before I did, which told me something about which mailbox things still landed in. "I removed him," I said. "You can't just—" She stopped. Started again, quieter, which was worse. "Do you have any idea what you're doing to us? He has a license. You understand that this goes on a record somewhere with his name on it? Not the account, his record." I have thought a great deal about what I said next, and whether I should have said more, and I would say it the same way today. It's my account. She lost one thing on my porch that morning, and it was small enough that nobody in my family has ever mentioned it. For 7 years, every envelope about that money had gone to her kitchen counter. That morning, she had to drive across town to find out what was in one. By noon, I was a person with a problem. The family thread lit up while I was on shift. My sister first, long ones, the kind with paragraph breaks. That her sister was harassing her family. That some people can't stand to watch somebody else's kid have more than they did. That she had bent over backwards to include me, and this is what it gets. My mother sent one line, "Call your sister." Then 4 minutes later, "Please, Thora." My brother-in-law didn't text. He left a voicemail at 2:14 in the afternoon, and I listened to it in the stairwell between the 4th and 5th floors, with my badge still clipped on. I used his work voice. Warm, unhurried, a little amused at the misunderstanding. It's a good voice. I have heard my mother repeat sentences said in that voice as though they were weather reports. "Hey, so I think there's some confusion about how these accounts are structured, which happens, it's not intuitive. Whatever you think you're looking at, you're misreading it. Don't call the 800 number, they'll just read you a script and it'll muddy things. Let me walk you through it. I'll bring everything." I played it twice, then a third time with my thumb over the speaker to keep it quiet. A man who has never once explained that account to me in 7 years was offering to bring everything to my kitchen table by dinner. Not mail it. Bring it. And in the middle of a message about a misunderstanding, one clean instruction about who I was not to call. Somebody came through the stairwell door, and I put the phone in my scrub pocket and went back up to the floor and pulled the next request off the queue. I did not call him back. I did not answer my mother. I finished my shift, and on the drive home I said it out loud in the car, to nobody, at a red light on Wilmington Pike. I wants to reach the papers before the papers reach me. Thursday afternoon my sister asked me to come by the brokerage office, and she asked nicely, which was new. Glass front, her face on the window in vinyl, 2 agents at desks pretending to work. She took me into the back conference room where the coffee maker is and shut the door and did not sit at the head of the table, which I noticed, because people who set a room up are always telling you something. "I don't want this to be a thing," she said. "Mom's a wreck. Callie asks about you." Then she slid a folder across and opened it for me, like a waiter. A check, filled out in her handwriting, the office account, the memo line already written in. Family, The date was Thursday's date. The signature line was empty. $6,100. We're prepared to close it out and just be done, she said. You get out what's there and we stop doing this to each other. That's the whole remaining value. That's everything that's in it. I looked at the number for longer than was polite. 7 pages in my father's tin. 7 Januaries. Logo across the top, balance near the bottom, 18,930 in the small font on the most recent one. 6,100 has never been printed on a single piece of paper that ever came to my house. Where'd you get that figure? That's what it's worth. She capped and uncapped her pen. Look, this is what I mean. You're doing the voice. What voice? The one you do, like you're taking a statement. She pushed her hair back. It's my daughter's future and you're treating it like a claim. I let that sit on the table between us for a second, unclaimed. $16,800 in. And across the table, a woman who has never once been able to tell me what our mother's mortgage payment is, quoting me a number to the hundred without opening a laptop. She turned the folder a half-inch toward me with 2 fingers. Sign the release and I'll sign that today. She hadn't signed it yet. And the number sitting in that box was a number somebody had told her, which meant somebody in my family had been reading a page I'd never been sent. I didn't sign anything in that room. I told her I'd think about it, and I thanked her for the coffee I hadn't touched, and I left the folder open on her side of the table where she could look at it all afternoon. Friday I stopped at the school to put money on Callie's lunch account. $40, the first week of every school year since kindergarten. It is a 2-minute errand. You stand at the counter under the laminated map of the building, and the secretary types the child's name, and you slide the bills across. She typed it, then she typed something else. Then she turned the monitor a few degrees away from me, which is a thing I do at work when a screen is about to say something a person should not have to read upside down. Let me check one thing, she said. She was apologetic before she had anything to be apologetic about. That's how I knew. You're not on her account anymore, hun. She scrolled. And you're off the emergency card. And the pickup list. It was changed yesterday at 4:40. That card has 4 lines on it. Mother, father, grandmother. And for 7 years the 4th line said my name, my cell number, and the word aunt in the handwriting of whoever was sitting at that desk in whatever August it was. Line 4 now had Kendra's name on it, and a phone number I have never had. A parent can add you back any time, the secretary said. It's just a form, it takes a minute. She said it kindly. She said it the way they tell you the doctor will be right in. I put the 220s back in my wallet, because you cannot leave money on a child's account when you are not attached to the child anymore. And behind her the door buzzer went off, long and flat, and a man came in backward with a case of copy paper against his chest, and she had to get up. I was supposed to go to the Kroger. I got as far as the light on her street, and then I was parked a block down from her house with the engine off. I am not going to dress that up. Their porch light came on at 8. The screen door banged. Callie came out with the kitchen bag held away from her legs, the way kids carry garbage, got it into the can, put the lid on with both hands, and then she saw my car. She came across the grass at a dead run, barefoot. The fence there is chain link, waist high on an adult. She put both hands through it. Hi. Hi, Bug. She was missing a tooth on the bottom that had been there in August. She had to tell me about the side door, the reading corner, and a girl in her class whose family owns a bearded dragon. All of it in one breath, fingers hooked in the wire. Then she stopped, and she got the careful look children get when they are about to repeat something they were not supposed to hear. Mom says you decided you don't want to come around anymore. There was a moth in the streetlight over us. I could hear it hitting the glass. Some things a 7-year-old does not get to hold. I meant that in the yard with the cake in front of her. I meant it standing on that curb. I'm around, I said. She thought about it. She has her grandfather's face when she is deciding whether to believe you. Okay. Her mother's voice came off the porch then, 1 syllable, and she went. At the bottom step she turned and waved with her whole arm. No dignity at all, the way she does at the fence on the first day of school. I drove home. I stood at the kitchen calendar with a pen and put a circle around Saturday, and then I stood there a while longer with the pen still in my hand. There was nothing left to protect by being pleasant. Saturday morning, I drove over at 10 with a small box wrapped in drugstore paper. My mother's car was in the driveway. So was Kendra's. So was my brother-in-law's truck, backed in against the garage, the way he parks when he is not going anywhere. They were in the living room with the good coffee out, and all four stood up when I came in, which tells you what they thought I had come to do. I did not sit down. I stayed on my feet in the middle of that rug and said the sentence I had built the night before, in the flat voice, with no edges on it. You were right. She should have somebody around her who's building something. My mother put her hand over her mouth. I took out the letter I had typed for the parish office, withdrawing my name from the godparent line, signed and dated, and put it on the coffee table facing my sister. Then I gave Kendra the box, a little enamel cross on a chain from the parish gift shop. She opened it right there and hugged me, and she smelled like eucalyptus and clean laundry. My sister cried. She actually did. She said she knew it had been hard, that this was what family was, that she had never wanted it to be a thing. I asked for one thing. The program nights at the hall, can I come? She stopped mid-sentence. I want to understand it, I said. People at church ask me because they know I've been in it the longest. I'd rather not say the wrong thing about my own family. She looked at her husband. He shrugged. Come to both, she said, and got a real estate card off the sideboard and wrote both dates on the back, the 5th and the 12th. The second one was already going in the bulletin, under a heading the pastor had approved, and Kendra was pulling a list. I had wrapped that box at my kitchen table the night before, on the same surface as the 3 folders. I moved the yellow one to get the ribbon flat. By Monday there was a picture of the 3 of us on her page, her arm around my shoulders, the letter on the coffee table cropped out, Kendra holding the little cross up by the chain. She wrote a paragraph under it about how not every family gets to have this conversation with love, and how her sister had been so gracious about it truly, and that she was proud of us both. My mother forwarded it to me with 3 hearts in case I had missed it. By Tuesday the 2 nights were booked, the hall was reserved, and the invitations went out to the Parents Association list, which is a list my sister has controlled since Callie was 2. Wednesday she texted me to ask if I'd mind doing the coffee urn on the 5th and passing the tray during the presentation, since I was coming anyway, and it would look nice, family serving family. I said sure. I want to be precise about what those nights were, because I did not fully understand it myself yet, and by then I did not need to. Every claim they had made to me across 7 years at a kitchen counter was going to be made 3 more times, out loud, into a microphone, in a room with a ceiling fan and 60 folding chairs, in front of people who were writing their phone numbers on napkins. Thursday I called the parish office and asked what hours they keep, and whether the hall calendar is public, and the woman said, "Honey, it's on the corkboard by the door. Anybody can look at it." Whatever those 2 of them told that room on the 5th, they were going to have to stand up and tell it again on the 12th. And the second time there would be more people in the chairs than either of them could have named. Wednesday night I worked the overnight in records, and at 11 my phone lit up with a delivery notice. A carton, signature required. Arriving Thursday by 8 in the evening. Shipped from a fulfillment address in a suburb of Des Moines that I had never had a reason to type into anything. I refreshed the tracking page twice on the way back from the break room and then put the phone face down on the cart, because there is a kind of woman who watches a truck crawl across a map at midnight, and I had 8 hours of other people's records in front of me. I finished the shift. That is what I did with it. 2 discharge summaries for a law firm, 1 subpoena return with a cover sheet, a chart request from a woman in Florida trying to prove her mother's fall happened where she said it happened. I labeled every one of them. I put a control number on every one of them. That Florida woman had been calling our office for 5 weeks. It took me 9 minutes to find the page that answered her. I copied it and stamped it and sent it, because that is the whole job. Somebody asks what the paper actually says, and you go and you look. At 4 in the morning, I was writing the received date on a stranger's folder, and my hand went out from under me on the numeral 3, and the pen skipped, and I had to draw it again on top of itself so the tab would be legible. That's all it did, once on a 3. I put the folder in the outgoing bin with the others, and the trauma page went off over the ceiling speaker, and I got up and went. The carton was on my porch when I got home Thursday. I made myself eat dinner first. Then I cut the tape. It was not a file. It was a stack the depth of a phone book, a contract in an embossed cover, statements back to 2019, 4 pages each instead of 1, and a bound illustration, 41 pages long. I had signed the last page of a 41-page document I had never seen the other 40 pages of. My signature at 22, when I still made the T with a loop. The front page has boxes across the top. Owner, issue date, contract number. And one more, the box that was on none of the 7 pages in my father's tin. Insured. That was the word, not a number, a word. Beside it, no name at all. 3 things separated by slashes. I read them 4 times before they came apart. 22, F non-tobacco. That is a rate class. Age, sex, tobacco status. It is what a company writes down when it is pricing a specific human body, and it is what goes in that box on a life insurance contract. Because that is what this was. An indexed universal life contract, issued in September of 2019, and sold across a kitchen counter as an education funding strategy. I was 22 that summer. Callie was 6 days old. The cover of it had a name across the bottom in raised letters I could read with my thumb. Amber Ridge Financial Group, ARFG. 84 lines on a bank statement, 4 letters and a dash and a number, and my eye had gone to the number every time. Prem is not short for Premier. $16,800 had gone in. Page 3 of the last statement, under a heading I had never been shown, carried the number my sister quoted me without opening a laptop. Cash surrender value, $6,100. There was a cover letter on top, 1 paragraph, very polite. Certain records had not been included, the application and any medical questionnaire, the delivery receipt, and the current designation on file belonged to the underwriting file, and that required a separate authorization. Signed by the insured. They wanted a signature from the insured. I sat there with my hand flat over that box, trying to decide whether that was a formality or an answer. By 2 in the morning, I had the 41 pages spread from the salt shaker to the edge of the table, and I was reading them the way I read a chart. You learn something in records that nobody tells you on purpose. A document is not a story, it is a shape, and the shape tells you what it was built to do. A discharge summary written for a family looks nothing like one written to survive a lawyer. Those pages were not built to grow anything, column after column. Year 1 is where the money goes. There is a line called Target Premium, and every dollar of my $200 a month for that first 12 months sat inside it like a stone in a pocket. Year 1 charges took most of what I paid, and years 2 through 7 paid what was left of it back at a rate a footnote on page 38 called non-guaranteed. The projection on page 9 had my balance at $41,000 by 2031. The footnote said the numbers illustrated are not a promise. 7 Januaries of 1 page with a logo across the top, and every one of them printed the only number on that whole illustration that would keep a person calm. I got out a legal pad and wrote 3 questions. 1. Whose money made the first year of this worth what the first year of this was worth to somebody? 2. What number is in the box they did not send me? 3. Whose handwriting? I printed the authorization at work on the 4th, had it notarized on my lunch break at the branch on Far Hills, and sent it certified. I did not use a return address label. I wanted my own hand on the envelope. Somebody had written the answers to those medical questions in 2019. Whoever it was, the paper with their handwriting on it, was sitting in a records room in another state under a hold, and I had just asked for it by name. The 5th of September, the parish hall smelled like coffee and floor wax and 60 people. I did the urn. I did the tray. There were shortbread cookies on it, and I went up 1 row and down the next while my brother-in-law worked the front of the room with a clicker in his hand. And I want you to understand that I did not ask a single question that night. I did not write anything down. I sat in the 3rd row with the empty tray on my knees like a woman waiting for her ride. High is good. I have to say that. He is warm and he is unhurried, and he never says a number without pausing after it so the room can catch up. This isn't an expense, he said. It's a redirect. You're already spending this money. We're just moving it somewhere that works for her instead of for the bank. Kendra stood at his left shoulder in a blazer with her hands folded and nodded on the beats, the way you nod at a sermon. I used the phrase 4 times. Education funding strategy. Twice more he called it the program. Once, near the end, a man in the 2nd row asked what company it was through, and he said the name of the administrator. And then he said, and this is verbatim, the paperwork side is honestly the boring part, that's why you have me. 3 days later, my sister wrote an invoice for that evening on her own letterhead. I did not know that yet. I would be holding a copy of it in October. The hall lights went to 9:30, the way they do, and the man in the second row was still writing his number down when his wife took the pen out of his hand and wrote hers instead. 3 families found me in the parking lot before I got my car door open. The parish treasurer's dining room table is oak and seats 8, and over 4 evenings between the 7th and the 10th of September, 9 households put their paper on it. They came in twos, mostly. Nobody wanted to be first. The treasurer made coffee at 7 every night and never once told anybody what to think, which is why they came. 9 files, every one of them a single page a year, with a logo across the top and a balance near the bottom. 2 families had never received a page at all in 4 years and assumed that was normal, because a neighbor told them theirs came in January. One man, a retired pressman with a folder held together by a rubber band, had a balance that went down between his 4th year and his 5th. He called about it once and was told it was a market thing, and he said okay, because what else do you say? 6,100 was the shape of what was coming for all of them. Nobody at that table knew that yet, including me. I did not ask anybody to do anything. I want that on the record, because my family has since described those evenings in ways I would not recognize. Every household got the same 2 things from me. The complaint line for the Ohio Department of Insurance, on the back of my hospital card, and the fact that the department takes a complaint from the person who owns the file and nobody else. One woman asked me what I was going to do. I said I was going to file mine. Then don't call me, I said. Call them, it's your paper. The treasurer walked me out on the 4th night with a manila folder against her chest. The parish family life fund had paid an LLC twice for the enrollment evenings, and she had the paid invoices, and the pastor had said she could copy them for me. Marketing consulting, the memo line said. The LLC was my sister's. Their invoice numbers were 19 apart. The 12th they had to open the double doors at the back, because 60 chairs was not going to be enough. Kendra spoke first that night, alone, for 11 minutes. She had it down. She had it word for word, which is the part I keep coming back to, because she did not put a single sentence of her own into it. Redirect, not an expense. The paperwork side is the boring part. She said the phrase education funding strategy twice and mispronounced the word indexed both times. My sister stood up at the end and put her hand on Kendra's back, exactly the way she had done it in the yard in August with a butter knife in her other hand. For anybody who doesn't know her yet, Kendra is our family's planner. She does ours. She's my daughter's godmother. The room made the sound rooms make. I had looked her up by then. The department publishes a lookup. You type a name and a county, and it gives you a license number and an issue date. Hers was a resident license issued in May of that year. 4 months old. 9 months is when the renewals and the review thresholds start to matter in a producer's first cycle, which I did not know that night either, and which somebody in that room knew very well. 5 days later, she wrote the second invoice. Same LLC, same memo line, and a number that told me there was a whole book of them somewhere I had not seen. They turned people away at the doors that night, and on Monday, the parish put a third one on the corkboard calendar by the office. The 19th, 7 o'clock, same hall. My sister texted me about it before 6 the next morning, between the gym and her first showing. Earn again? And the tray. You were a natural at it. I typed sure, and put the phone face down, and I want to be honest that I was not thinking about the tray. On the 15th, my mother cleared her dining table all the way down to the wood, which she does for holidays and for nothing else. There were 4 of us. My mother, my sister, my brother-in-law, and me. A pitcher of iced tea nobody drank from. And in the middle of the table, one sheet, printed on the brokerage letterhead, 3 paragraphs, drafted by my sister. On agreement between family members, not to discuss family financial matters with individuals outside the immediate family. Not with the parish, not with neighbors, not online. Signed and dated by all parties. It's not about you, my sister said. It's for all of us. Mom shouldn't have to hear about her own family in the vestibule. My mother pushed the pen across the wood toward me with 2 fingers, the way you slide medicine toward a child. My brother-in-law watched my hands and not my face, which is the only thing he did wrong all evening. I read it twice because you always read it twice. and then I signed it, and I dated it, and I took my copy and folded it once, and put it in my wallet in the sleeve where the green card was. They fit in there together with room left over. Then we're all clear, my sister said, and she poured the tea nobody had asked for. All right, I said. You do not put a rule like that on letterhead for a family with nothing to say. The 19th was a Saturday, and the presentation was at 7, and I was in the third row with a paper cup of coffee, and my phone lying face up on the table beside a stack of pamphlets. In Ohio, one person in a conversation has to agree to it being recorded. I was that person. I was in the room, in the chair, with my knees against the table skirt, for all 51 minutes of it. And I was in that room a good while after, because the woman who carries the tray is also the woman who stacks the cups and folds the chairs, and waits for somebody to come kill the lights. My brother-in-law took questions that night, which he had not done on the 5th. A woman near the front asked, "What happens if something goes wrong? If the market drops? If somebody loses a job and has to stop?" He smiled. He put both hands out flat. "There's no risk to the family," he said. "The family only benefits. That's the whole design." Later a man asked how the families were chosen, whether it was open to the school or only the parish, and my sister took that one from the side of the room without a microphone, in the voice she uses at the podium at the Parents' Association. "I put every one of these families together myself," she said. "Every single one. I know what's in every folder in this room." Neither of them ever asked why the sister who had been in it 7 years sat through 3 nights of it without raising her hand once. 11 days later, a person in a state office in Columbus would put on headphones. The 30th of September, a Wednesday, on my laptop at the kitchen table, at 6 in the evening, with the tin open beside me. The department takes complaints through a portal. It is a plain form. It asks for your name, your contact information, the licensee involved, the company involved, a description of what happened, and it gives you a box for attachments that will accept a very large number of files. I attached my contract file, the 41 pages, 84 bank lines, 7 annual summaries, photographed front and back, with the ruler in frame. 9 summaries from 9 households who had each sent me their own, unasked, with their own cover notes, because I had told every one of them to keep the originals in their own houses. The recording from the 19th. The agreement on brokerage letterhead, dated the 15th, signed by 4 people. The description box takes 4,000 characters. I used about 1,100 of them, and not one adjective. Dates, amounts, page numbers, who was standing where, and what was said into a microphone in a room with 60 chairs in it. Near the bottom there is a field, relationship to the licensee. There is a drop-down, and none of the entries in it fit, so I used the other box. Sister-in-law and sister. I read the whole form back twice, and then I hit submit at 6:22, and the screen said thank you, and gave me a confirmation number, and offered to email me a copy. I had it printed and in the 3rd tab before the coffee finished going cold. The confirmation letter came on the 6th of October, on state letterhead, with a file number in the reference line and a name and a direct extension of the investigator assigned. There was a second reference number under the first one, formatted differently, with a prefix I did not recognize, and no explanation of what it was attached to. That same week, my sister rented the back room at a steakhouse on Far Hills for what the invitation called a record quarter celebration. 22 people. My mother went, in the blue dress, and sent me a picture of the dessert. The pictures went up that night. My sister with a glass, Kendra with a glass, my brother-in-law in the middle of a sentence with his hand up, and the caption said that this is what happens when you stop apologizing for winning. My mother called me from the parking lot afterward to tell me the chocolate thing had been too rich for her and that everyone had asked after me, which was not true, and which was kind of her. I asked her if she had brought anything with her. Any paper. She said, what on earth would she bring paper for? At 11 my phone buzzed on the nightstand with a text from him. Family cleans its own house. I lay there and looked at the ceiling and thought about a man who had told 60 people that there is no risk to the family and who now believed the house he was cleaning was mine. The 8th of October, the agency office on Far Hills got a letter with a document schedule attached. I know what it said because 6 weeks later, I would be sitting across from the woman who wrote it, produced the complete file, Produce all illustrations presented. Produce the delivery receipts. Produce a list of every contract issued through this office to members of a named parish community since 2019, with dates. The office manager took my brother-in-law into the glass conference room at the front, the one my sister had walked me into in August, and closed the door, and pulled the blind that nobody in that office had pulled in 2 years. 2 agents watched it happen from their desks and then found somewhere else to be. My mother called me that evening. She was crying before I said hello. She did not ask if I was all right. She did not ask what was in the letter, or what any of it meant, or whether it was true. "What did you do to your sister?" I stood in my kitchen with the phone against my ear and the tin on the counter, and I did not say the thing that would have ended it in one sentence. The microwave went off behind her, 3 flat tones, and she said the casserole was up and she had to go. The 9th, I was in the lot outside Kendra's studio at 5:10 in the morning, because the coffee place next to it is the only thing open at that hour on Wayne. And because I had been working through the recording in 20-minute pieces in parked cars for 3 weeks. And the piece I got to that morning was the end. The applause, chairs, somebody's kid. Then 2 sets of heels coming up to the pamphlet table where my phone was lying face up, and me 8 feet behind them at the urn with a sleeve of cups in my hand, close enough to hear a purse zipper, and neither of them turning around. "Just need a face in that parish before your 9 months are up," my sister said. "Nobody sits down with somebody they met at a gym. They sit down with the godmother." Kendra said something I could not make out. "No, her? God, no." A laugh, short, nothing behind it. "She's tapped out. There's nothing left to write on her." I sat in my car in the dark with the heater making its noise and played those 11 seconds 4 times. Not a warning. That was the word she used in the yard with 40 people watching, and my niece kneeling on a chair with frosting on her chin. And I had carried that word around all fall like something in my shoe. I had not been replaced because of what I might teach that child. I had been replaced because I had nothing left to sell. That afternoon I drove to my mother's with one piece of paper and asked her to go find hers. It took her 19 minutes. Second floor closet, a folder with a rubber band around it, under a shoebox of my father's returns. The one I brought was the treasurer's, which the treasurer had told me I could show her. I put them side by side on the kitchen table where I have eaten Sunday dinner my whole life. Same logo across the top. Same 6-word sentence under the balance. Same font. Different names, different numbers, and the same nothing where the road should have been. She read them both. She put her hand on the treasurer's page and moved it a little, like she was smoothing it, and she read them again. "But she's your sister," she said. I did not tell her that her name was not on anything I had sent to Columbus. Not on the complaint, not in the attachments, not on any list of people the state would be calling. I had made that decision at the treasurer's dining table on the 10th of September, and I never told a soul in my family that I had made it, including the woman standing in front of me with her reading glasses pushed up into her hair. The bracket I hung on her porch in August has a basket on it now, a fall thing, mums and ivy. The wind moved it while we stood there, and she looked out the window at that instead of at me, and told me it needed water. The underwriting file was in my mailbox Friday night. 3 inches of it, in a padded envelope taped twice. The application first. My signature at the foot of every page, exactly where I put it, standing up at a counter with a bottle knocking in a pan behind me. And above it, the medical section. 21 questions, filled in top to bottom in block capitals. I have known that handwriting since the 4th grade. She crosses her 7s. She has since she was 9, because she thought it looked like somebody who traveled. Height, weight, physician, hospitalizations. Question 14. Tobacco use within the last 12 months. No. Random question. You've never smoked, right? Not even in college. Perfect. Just something for Callie's paperwork. She asked me that at my mother's table, over pot roast, 7 years after she wrote the answer down. Behind the application, the delivery receipt. 1 page, signed by the agent of record, dated the 20th of September 2019, certifying that he had personally delivered the contract to the insured and reviewed it with her. I was at work that day. I have never sat down with that man and reviewed anything. And behind that, the page. The gray pencil line under 2 words in my own hand, still there, exactly where I left it while a newborn slept in a bouncer 4 feet away. Insured, Thora Minat. Face amount, $250,000. Primary beneficiary, 100%, my sister. I read it standing up, then I sat down. 200 a month, 84 months, for a child's college. For the day I die. The woman who gets the money stood up in her own backyard in front of 40 people and said I was not the kind of person she wanted near her daughter. The refrigerator cycled on. I did not move for a while. At the bottom of that page, in 6-point type under the signature block, was a line about a period of 2 years from the date of issue, and what a company may and may not do inside it. The contract was issued in September of 2019, and I took that page to work with me, because at 4 in the morning, a records room is nothing but me and the ceiling lights and a search bar that doesn't ask why. Contestable period. 2 years from the date of issue. Inside those 2 years, a company that finds a wrong answer on an application can go back and undo the whole thing, take its money out of the middle of a family and walk away. After that, it can't. After that, the paper stands, tobacco question and all, and pays exactly what it says it pays. September of 2021, 5 years gone. So nobody was going to unwind it for me. Not the department, not the company, not a lawyer having a good week. What my sister printed in block capitals in that kitchen had hardened into a thing nobody in the state of Ohio could argue with anymore. I sat with that for a while. The ice machine down the hall dropped a load and started over. Then I read the top of page 1 again. The row of boxes I had been walking past for 5 weeks because my eye kept going to the one that said insured. Owner, Thora Minat. There is a form, 1 page. It asks for the contract number, the owner's name, and a signature, and it takes about 4 minutes, and there is exactly 1 person alive who is allowed to fill it out. I did not fill it out. I sat there at 4:10 with a pen in my hand and did not touch it because a thing you can do at any time is worth more than a thing you have already done, and because I wanted to know the date before I wanted the satisfaction. I put the designation page in the 3rd tab, behind the recording and the agreement they made me sign, and I closed the folder and clipped it shut. For 7 years, my sister knew one thing about that file that I didn't. That morning it turned over, and there was a number in it she had not had to think about since Callie was 6 days old. The 11th they called a family meeting, which in my mother's house means she cooks and nobody eats. 4 adults in the living room. My mother in her chair, my sister on the couch with her phone face down on her knee, my brother-in-law standing by the bookcase with his sleeves rolled, which is what he does when he wants a room to feel like a kitchen table. They had 2 requests and they had rehearsed the order. 1. Withdraw the complaint. There was a phrase for it he had clearly looked up. A request for administrative closure, and he said it slowly, so my mother could hear that it was a real thing with a real name. 2. Keep paying the 200. For Callie, my sister said. That's all any of this was ever for. My mother looked from one of us to the other, with her hands in her lap. She wanted to understand it. She has wanted to understand it her whole life, and every year there is more of it and less of her. But what does Thora get, my mother said, if she keeps paying into a thing she's not happy with? My sister made a sound through her nose. It stays in force. That's the point. It's $200. She turned her palm up at me like I was a chair somebody had left in the doorway. It doesn't cost her anything while she's alive. Nobody in that room moved. My brother-in-law started talking about grace periods and lapse notices in the warm, unhurried voice, and my mother nodded because it was a voice she trusted, and my sister picked her phone up off her knee. Behind me, out in the hall where the stairs go up, a bare foot came down on the 3rd step from the bottom. That step has made the same noise since I was 9. Nobody in the living room turned around. Tuesday morning, the post office on Wilmington Pike, the same clerk with the same stamp. I sent my sister an envelope with no letter in it. Inside were 2 pages. On the left, a column of start dates, copied off the stapled roster she slapped into my palm in her own backyard in August, and that had been folded in half in my back pocket ever since. Her office's printout, her names, her dates, 1 line for every family in that parish she had put in the program. 7 years of them, and they came in clusters, and every cluster sat in the 2 weeks after an enrollment evening in that hall. On the right, 2 dates, 2 numbers, 2 memo lines that both said, Marketing Consulting, on paid invoices out of an LLC with her name on the registration and her home address on the filing. The money that paid them was the Parish Family Life Fund. The invoices were dated the 8th and the 17th of September. The evenings were the 5th and the 12th. I had lined the columns up so that a person reading them from a driveway could see it without being told. 2 pages, and every date on both of them came from her. There was nothing else in the envelope. No note, no cover page, no adjective. She is very good with dates. She has been putting other people's closings on a calendar for 11 years. The second copy went out in the same trip, to a woman in Columbus with a direct extension, and that one did have a letter, and the letter had 3 paragraphs. The first said what the columns were. The second asked that the 9 households from that parish be scheduled ahead of my own file, because they had been paying with retirement money and I had been paying with overtime. The third paragraph had one name in it that I left out on purpose, and it stayed out, and my mother has never known that she was a decision somebody made in a post office lobby with a pen borrowed from a counterchain. The clerk stamped the second green card and slid it back across, and I put it in my wallet in front of the first one. Then I asked the department one question about my own contract, in writing, and the answer came back 8 days later in a single sentence, and it was the last thing I needed before the 24th. The 24th was a Saturday, and by then, the letter from the agency's lawyer had gone around the family like a photograph. The department had pulled 34 files written out of that one office. Same product, same illustration, same parish. Total premiums collected, $512,000. Everybody was at my mother's. My sister, my brother-in-law, my mother, an aunt who drove in from Springfield to be helpful. Callie was at a birthday party 2 streets over and would be picked up at 4, and that had been said twice before I got my coat off. My brother-in-law didn't speak. He sat on the arm of the couch with his forearms on his knees and looked at the carpet, and a man who has never in his life let a silence go 3 seconds let that one go a minute at a time. My sister did all of it herself, that I had done this out of jealousy, that I had gone to strangers about family, that she had a daughter who was going to hear about this at school. And did I understand that? Did I understand what I was doing to a 7-year-old? I let her finish. Then I put 2 pages on my mother's coffee table, side by side, facing her. The first was the agreement from the 15th of September, on brokerage letterhead, 3 paragraphs, 4 signatures, the one she drafted, and my mother pushed the pen for. It has a file stamp on it now. The second I typed myself. It said that I am the owner of that contract, that as of the 20th of October, the designation on file had been changed, and that no person in that room was on it, that the contract would be surrendered for its cash value the day the department releases the file, and that the $200 a month had stopped on the 1st, and where it was going instead. Under that, 3 lines. Callie and I see each other at my house or in a public place, arranged by text between the 2 of us, no middlemen. Nobody talks about money in front of her. Anything about the state file goes to the state, not through a child. My sister read the second page twice. I watched her get to the 3rd line and go back up to the top. Nothing on that page is a request, I said. Read the 3rd line again. 40 seconds, that is about how long it took. She had the page in both hands, and I watched the arithmetic land, and it did not land on her name in a public order, or on the parish, or on her husband sitting 8 feet away with his head down. You can't just take that off. Her voice came up out of the floor. Do you understand what that was? That was $250,000. That was ours. The aunt from Springfield said, "What is she talking about?" Nobody answered her. My mother put her hand on the back of the chair beside her, and then sat down in it, slowly, the way she sits when her knee is bad, and she did not sit down because of the money. My sister was still going. I don't know all of what she said. It had the words, "years" and "mine," and "after" everything in it, and it was addressed to a coffee table. I did not say one word. I picked my coat up off the arm of the chair and put it on in the front hall where the coats go, and I could hear her the whole time, and out through the storm door, the basket on the bracket I hung in August turned a quarter turn on its chain and turned back. The last week of October she took it to the child. I know the day it started, because Callie asked her grandmother a question on the 30th, and her grandmother repeated it to me over the phone in the voice of a woman reporting weather. She wanted to know if you're poor. By the 2nd of November it had a shape. Aunt Thora is trying to take money from our family. Aunt Thora went to the government about Daddy. There are things adults are handling, and it isn't a kid's business, which is a sentence that guarantees it will become a kid's business by Thursday. The parish treasurer called me on the 4th to say that a woman from the Parents' Association had been telephoned about the state, twice, and asked to describe what she remembered of the evenings in the hall. Not by the department, by my sister. Every one of those calls is a document now. Callie told me in December where her mother made them from and how close the kitchen table was to the phone. She started asking everyone. She asked her grandmother. She asked the woman who runs the after-school room. On the 6th, she asked her father at the kitchen counter, straight out, what the government letter was about, and he told her it was work mail, and she said okay, in the voice she uses when she has decided to stop asking that particular adult. 7-year-olds do not drop things. They put them down and come back. I got 2 texts from my sister that week, both after 11 at night, both about how a child should not be put in the middle, sent by a woman who had put her there on the 30th. I answered one of them. Bring her to my house Saturday or don't. A child who is handed a number and no story will go find the story herself, and she will look in the only place a 7-year-old can reach, which is the stairs. Saturday the 7th. My mother's car was at my curb at 10 in the morning, with the engine running, and my mother not getting out of it. Callie came up the walk by herself in her school coat with her hood down. She had a piece of paper held flat against her chest with both hands, the way you carry something you don't want the wind to have. She got to the top step and held it out before she said hello. She had ruled it herself. A pencil in the edge of a book, boxes all down the page, uneven, the lines pressed hard the way they press hard when they are copying something serious. Little labels in the corners of the small boxes because she has seen a lot of paper this fall. Name. Date. She had written the date wrong by a day. In the big box in the middle in her own printing, 2 lines. Aunt Thora lives, I'll pay the money back. At the bottom she had signed it. First name, last name, and then a line for me to sign underneath. You have to sign it too, she said, or it's not real. I got down on the step. Where did you hear about money, Bug? On the stairs. She wasn't upset. She was doing business. Mom said it doesn't cost anything while you're alive. The car idled at the curb. My mother had both hands on the top of the wheel and was looking straight down the street at nothing. So somebody's waiting, Callie said. So I'll pay it back. I have $41 and I get more at Christmas. She had it all worked out. She had brought a pencil in her coat pocket for me. I signed it, right there on the top step, with the paper on my knee. That evening she was still there, because my mother phoned my sister at noon and said the child was staying for dinner, and hung up before there could be a conversation about it. I got my father's tin down off the shelf and set it on the kitchen table and opened it in front of her. 7 pages in there with a logo across the top. I lifted them all out, and I put her page in first, alone, face up on the bare bottom of the tin, and set the 7 on top of it, and put the lid on. Before I opened it, I had tapped the lid twice, and I did not know I was going to. Is that where important things go? That's where they go, I said. It is the only piece of paper that came into my house that fall that I never photographed. The 14th was a Saturday, and I went to pick her up at 6, by text, between the 2 of us, which is line 1. The living room was full. Somebody's christening had happened that afternoon, and it had come back to the house. 10 or 12 adults with paper plates, my brother-in-law by the window not holding one. Kendra was on the ottoman with her coat still on. They had the conversation people have in front of a person they are punishing. Loud and general and about the price of everything. Callie came down with her overnight bag and her boots already on, and stopped at the bottom of the stairs. And the room did not really stop for her, so she went and stood right in front of her mother and waited to be looked at. Mom. Normal voice. The voice you use to ask when dinner is. When Aunt Thora dies, how much do you get? I have never heard a room do that. It wasn't quiet. It was a dozen people all deciding at once not to be the one who makes a sound. Her mother said her name, just her name. Callie waited. She gave it a real amount of time, the way you do when you have asked a fair question and you expect the adult to hold up their end. Then she picked her bag up off the floor and put her hand in mine. I'm sleeping at her house, she said to the room. I like being around people who are still alive. The storm door shut behind us on its own hinge. Nobody stood up. The 20th of November. I drove to Columbus and sat in a conference room on the 4th floor with a long table and 11 empty chairs and the kind of ceiling lights that hum a little when the heat comes on. The examiner had a copy of everything I'd sent, tabbed, with her own pencil work in the margins. The order was already signed. Cease and desist, in the matter of a named individual, my sister's name printed twice on the first page and once on every page after. 2 findings. Acting in the capacity of an insurance agent without a license. Accepting a share of commissions on the sale of contracts to 34 households. Civil penalties are calculated per violation. There were 34. The amount would be set at a hearing in the spring, and the order publishes either way, with her name in it, on a page the state keeps up forever and any person with a phone can find. She turned a page and read a count off it in the voice people use for a figure that has already stopped being an argument. 12 invoices out of that LLC since 2019. $14,900. I had sent her 2. She'll be asked to explain her invoices in writing, the examiner said, and then in person, in the spring. I asked where the hearings are held. 2 floors down, she said it without looking up. Same lights as these. Then she turned the folder around and went down the first page with her pencil. And she said the sentence I had been trying to build for 3 months out of 41 pages and a legal pad. It wasn't built to grow, it was built to be sold. Under that there is a box on their form. Injured party. She read the name in it out loud, the way you read a name into a record, first and last, and she got the T right. I had the green folder open on my knees. On the tab, in my own hand, was the line I wrote at my kitchen table at midnight on the 25th of August, when I had no proof of anything and one question with a shape. 6 words, I read them out to her. Who else has the same page? She wrote them down and underlined the first 2, and then she looked up at me over the top of her glasses. Would you like to make a statement? I was 21 when I left school in my last semester to sit with my father, and for 8 years my family has told that story for me at tables, in one sentence, with a little sigh in the middle of it. She wasn't strong enough to finish. Nobody ever asked me, not once, not one of them in 8 years. A woman with a state badge and a pencil asked me. Yes, I said I would. I said it took 84 months and there is a line on a bank page for every one of them. I said the child it was supposedly for has never had $1 in her name, and that I would like that in the record before anything about my sister goes in it. The reporter asked me to spell my last name. I spelled it twice because there are 2 ways people hear it, and I wanted the file to be right. The order published on the 20th and the rest of it came down over 3 weeks, and I did not have to do a single thing to any of it. On the 4th of December, the department suspended my brother-in-law's license on an emergency basis, pending revocation. He had until the 22nd to answer in writing. The carrier closed his appointment the same week, and when they close an appointment, they take back the advances they paid on every contract that gets unwound, which left a man who had been the family's answer to everything carrying a debit balance with 4 figures in it and no way to write his way out. On the 11th, they suspended Kendra. She had held that license 7 months. She never got to the 9. The parish secretary took a ruler and a pen and struck her name out of the godparent line in the ledger and left the line empty, because the only person who can put a name on it is the child's mother, and nothing went in that space until spring. She told me on the phone that the ink she ruled through had not been on that page 4 months. The LLC was ordered to return the $14,900, all 12 invoices, with the Parish Family Life Fund named as the party to be repaid on the 2 it had paid this fall. And the state opened a market conduct examination on the carrier itself, because 34 contracts of one design, sold through one office, into one congregation, is not a thing a company gets to call a coincidence. 34 households sat in that hall over 7 years and listened to my sister run a meeting. 34 of them are statements in a file in Columbus now. The Parents' Association met on the 9th and elected a chair for the winter term, and the vote was not close. And it was the first meeting in 5 years my sister did not run. The retired pressman with the rubber band around his folder made the motion. The first week of December, my mother started making phone calls. 4 of them. The 2 off her street, the widow on the corner, the couple with the RV. She got the complaint line off the letter and read it out digit by digit to each of them and made them read it back. And then she asked each one whether they still had their folder and where. She did it alone. She did not ask me to come, and she did not tell my sister she was doing it, and when the couple with the RV said they'd think about it, she called them again on the Thursday. She found out the other thing from an envelope that came to somebody else. The treasurer brought hers over to show her, a notice out of Columbus with her own name on it, and a paragraph about what a person named in a file gets asked. Nothing like it had ever come to my mother's house. She called the direct extension herself, and a woman in Columbus told her plainly that she had never been listed as a witness or a participant in anything. She stood in my kitchen with her coat still buttoned and asked me why not. Because you'd have had to sit in a room and be asked about your own daughter, I said. She did not cry and she did not thank me. She took her coat off, which she had not done in my house since August, and she washed the 2 cups that were in my sink, and then she asked whether the widow on the corner would have to go to Columbus, and I said no, a phone call is enough, and she nodded and dried her hands. My check came the second week, drawn on the company, with a contract number in the memo line and no letter attached. $6,100, the figure the department froze the day it pulled the file, to the dollar. The 9 households from the parish had been paid ahead of me. That was the only part of the entire year that went exactly the way I asked. The 10th of December was 4 months and 2 days after the party, and the first snow came in the afternoon and stuck on the ledge outside my kitchen window. I opened a 529 at the bank on Far Hills at lunch with Callie's name on it, and I funded it with the 6,100, and I set the 200 a month to draw on the first business day, same as it has since 2019. 7 years late, $10,700 short of what left my account. But the confirmation is 1 page and I read all of it, and the box at the top says beneficiary, and under it is her name, spelled right, and there is no other person anywhere on the sheet. That evening, I took the 7 annual summaries out of my father's tin and put them in a flat envelope addressed to Columbus, and I wrote the file number in the corner in block letters, and I left it by the door. Then I gave Callie the tin. She had come over after school with her grandmother, and a bag of the little oranges, and she took it in both hands the way you take something with weight to it, and she asked what was in it, and I told her to look. 2 pieces of paper, her page, ruled in pencil, signed by both of us, and the confirmation with her name on it. She read the second one all the way to the bottom. It took her a while. She is 7 and it is not written for her, and I let her do it, and she asked me what a beneficiary was, and I told her. That's the person it's for. She put the lid back on and tapped it twice, because she had seen me do it, and then she said the thing I am going to keep. When I'm big, I'm going to be the person who reads what the papers actually say. Outside, the snow came down past the window in the streetlight and gathered along the ledge, an inch of it by the time she fell asleep on my couch with her boots still on. Here is the only thing I know now that I didn't know in August. There is a kind of person a family finds very easy to love, and she is usually the one who pays. What they call generous is sometimes just a room in you that they found unlocked. Nobody plans it. It starts as a favor and it hardens into an arrangement. And by the 7th year it has a place at the table and a name that sounds like a compliment. I am not going to tell you to stop giving. I gave for 7 years and I would do most of it again. I am going to ask you one thing instead. Somewhere in your house, there is a paper with your signature on it that you did not read all the way to the bottom. A form somebody handed you across a counter, in a good month, when you trusted the person holding the pen. Who filled in the parts you didn't read? Go find it. Read the boxes at the top, the ones with 1 word in them. Then tell me in the comments what you found, or tell me about the person in your family who pays and doesn't get a vote, because I promise you they are listening to this too. Thank you for staying with me all the way to the end of this one. I'll see you in the next story.